Go. Our guest is a Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches member and has been recognised by global gurus as one of the top 30 experts in organisational culture. Today, he's here to share insights into the creation of a positive employee experience. Please welcome Dr. David Cohen.
Thank you
for joining me.
I'm glad to be here.
Well,
Time difference and all.
Well, I love speaking with doctors because I know that they're very well educated. And I think this is very important in today's world. I once learned that if you want to be a professional speaker, you have to know 100 words for every one word that come out of your mouth. But today with the internet, you can put 100 words on paper and nothing comes out of your mouth. So I look forward to these conversations.
I try to keep it simple.
Well, simple's an art, isn't it? It's not easy to do things simple. I was an athlete and people would say, "Oh, Daniel, you do that trick on the wakeboard so easily." Well, after getting knocked unconscious about 30 times in the previous 10 years, I had to learn to make it really simple so I didn't knock myself out anymore.
That makes sense. It's not a good thing to get knocked out.
No. And I feel sometimes, when we listen to people, I was at a seminar recently and my left brain short-circuited because of about 2 hours into the seminar, we're still hearing all of these facts and these figures and this data and this science. And my right brain screaming out, "Give me a story.
Yeah.
Give me an anecdote. Paint a picture, I'm drowning." And the left brain just short-circuited.
Simple's good for my information brain. Overload.
It is. You studied a doctorate. What did you end up specializing in? And more importantly, how did you get there?
I did an unusual doctorate. I did in the School of Education at Boston University with independent studies at Harvard School of Education. And it was on curriculum design, basically adolescent development, to teach moral education in the, how do you teach it, moral social justice education in public schools. And It was based on the Harvard Social Studies curriculum. And I created a whole process of how to integrate basically Socratic discussion so students would hear all sides of the story and be able to have informed opinions that they can form on their own. So teachers fed them the information, they discussed the information, they debated the information, and then they had to form an opinion and present that opinion to the class and have it challenged. And it was quite thrilling. It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Out of all the things that you could have chosen to study, what was important to you about this topic?
I grew up in a very socially conscious house. So I was always, from a very young age, very involved. My father when I was younger, was involved in union organizing. I was involved, I grew up in the high school years were in the latter half of the 60s. So I was very active in social justice and the civil rights movement in the United States, and against the war in Vietnam. So it sort of became part of my DNA over the years, and pursuing that became a natural extension of how could we have a better educated, better informed population that can make decisions based on fact and not opinion.
Well, that's an interesting thing, isn't it?
Yes, wish it worked.
The reason why I say it's interesting is when I look at the news today, it doesn't seem to be fact-based. It seems to be opinion news. It's
that's
it's
all
an
it is.
opinion expressed with authority. And
Yeah,
for a moment, I get sucked into it and I say, hang on, is this an opinion or is it fact? But it's broadcast like it's an opinion.
yeah,
Breaking news at 6 p.m.
yeah. If
Breaking
you say
opinions.
something with authority as if you're telling the truth and say it over and over again, there are people who will believe it even though it's not true. They might have
Mm,
questioned it, but they got so accustomed to hearing it from one or two sources that they trust, they begin to believe it, even though there's no truth to it whatsoever. And that's how, unfortunately, many political leaders come to power and corrupt democracy.
mm.
But we're
Would
not
it
here for
be
that.
would it be crazy to say that that might even be their strategy?
It is their strategy. It is blatantly there. It's their playbook,
Mm.
and their
How do
playbook is
we
clear.
protect our mind from that? What would be a couple of basic things that we could do today just to, maybe become more aware of that playbook?
You find, to me, you find sources. You find multiple independent sources. For me, it's the New York Times. For me, it's the BBC. It's a number of other newspapers that will are known for giving it the way it actually happened. And therefore, you compare that to what people are saying and say, you know, you kind of wonder what drugs they're on, that there's no truth to the reality of what they're saying, but they're saying it with conviction. And so it's something that has persuaded people because, great orators can capture the imagination, even though, you know, it's probably not true, but it's what they want you to believe is true.
Mm. Mm. Is that Socratic method important in today's age where people are being fed what I would see is information, misinformation, and disinformation? Is that Socratic method important for them to create that critical thinking?
Yes, I think that critical thinking is unfortunately, in many North American high schools, both the US and Canada, critical thinking has diminished significantly or disappeared in some places altogether. And it's
Mm.
just what the school system wants you to say. I mean, you look at places in the US where they have banned books, which there's no reason to ever ban a book unless it's teaching you how to kill somebody or murder. I mean, it's like you got to hear different opinions. You got to make your own. So as soon as you have the overtures of censorship, you know that they don't want you to think for yourself. And as soon as they don't want you to think for yourself, they're going to tell you what to think. And as soon as they're telling you what to think, they manipulate your reality. So, I always say to people, tell a teenager not to read something, they're likely to read it. So hopefully there's enough teenagers out there with enough of gumption to go out and say, let me find that book and read it. There's got to be a reason I was told not to. And then they can form their own opinion.
Mm. They're interesting ages when we go through those mismatching stages. You say to your daughter, don't date that boy. Well, Dad,
That's a
I'm just
good way
going
to
to do
get
the
them to
opposite to
date.
what you told me.
Yes. Yeah. Here's reverse psychology. Date that boy.
Don't do donuts in your car. Oh, Dad, I never thought of that. Thanks for planting that seed in my mind. And they're out in the streets spinning around in circles.
Sounds like you have experience with that.
My wife, when she processes information, she mismatches the information to understand it. And what I've learned is over the years, I have to present information in a different way. So I think most husbands have had the experience where wife asks you what you'd like for dinner, and you say, I want steak and eggs. And then you quickly realize that was not the answer. So when my wife says to me, what do you want for dinner? I give her a list of all the things I don't want. Well, I don't want KFC. I don't want pizza. I don't want McDonald's. And she'll say, then we'll have steak and eggs. That was the answer. So I've got to tell her what I don't want to get what I do want. But I think we have to test these things. When I went to school, I was diagnosed with linear sequential learning disability. And what I now know was I was a very good lateral thinker, which has a component of critical thinking. I could think in different ways. I didn't have to go lineal at 1 + 2 = 3. I could get there in many other ways, but the school system didn't really like it. And it was hard for them to deal with that type of thinking. And so I thought I was at a disadvantage for many years. And then I started to study the work of Dr. Edward de Bono. And he was talking about lateral thinking. He was talking about critical thinking in the 70s and the 80s. And I read all of his books and I thought to myself, there's nothing wrong with my mind. It's just a lateral thinking type mind. And once I got out of the school system that I was in, my lateral thinking was actually rewarded, because when I got into real estate, I could put deals together that weren't as simple as A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. And I thought to myself, isn't that interesting? I was thinking in a way that people were probably opposed to, because it wasn't systemic and maybe it wasn't something that they could have complete control over. But now I realize that
you were able to see around the corner and they couldn't.
Yes. Well, my eyes used to go like that as well.
Well, I grew up, I went to start, obviously, to elementary school in the 50s and was a uncomfortable student for teachers because I couldn't pay attention. I mean, nobody knew that I had ADHD until I was an adult, figured it out. And to add to my problems, I had that thing called dyslexia and lazy eye. So one eye looked one way and one eye looked the other. And so the three afflictions actually taught me coping skills that made me able to do things, memorize things, and think probably differently than a lot of people. And that's probably, why some people call me a contrarian consultant, because I don't necessarily say I question what's popular because I don't think it works, and say there's an alternative way of thinking about it. And have you thought about it? And it's like all of a sudden they say, I kind of thought about it, but it wasn't the popular way of thinking, so I just let it go. But now that you say it, maybe it does make more sense. Mm-hmm. So, that's, I think the way that I look at corporate culture is very different the way a lot of people look at it. And so it's an interest, I love what I do, and I love it when somebody challenges me on it and comes back and, we have a good discussion on it. So I just keep doing this, that's the kind of stuff I do with my clients. I help them understand there's another way of thinking about things than what they've been taught. And because they've been taught very linearly, I mean, MBA schools are, they teach case study, and the case study has a right answer when the case study probably has many right answers. So, when you think of the first right answer, I say come up with the second right answer. And then when you combine the two, you have the third. And by the time you got to the third, you have something you never thought of that actually might work.
Mm-hmm. Got to challenge it. My mum would always say there's many ways to skin a cat.
Yes.
And I think we learn that over time, that we have to do things differently, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Somebody can say, go and do it differently. Well, what does that even mean, to do it differently? People say, oh, we've got a great culture. We have pizza on Friday at work. Pizza Fridays. Sign me up.
Yeah, I just finished writing a white paper on employee experience, where I argue that the employee engagement is a byproduct of the employee experience. You can have all the pizza you want, but if you make a promise that these are the behaviors around the values, and then you make decisions for expedience to expedite something or to make a profit, and it counters, you just told everybody you're a hypocrite, you don't live your values, you disengage, the experience becomes negative for employees. And I don't care how many pizza parties and soccer games or whatever you want to play or go or do. When they get home, what do they talk about? They don't talk about the pizza. They talk about my boss, yelled at me today because, or told me I wasn't doing something right, or the senior. I don't understand why senior managers making these decisions, because the contract, when I started here on onboarding, they said these are the values. They're really proud of them, but it's all wall decor. So, to me, employee engagement, you can measure it all you want. It's one day in time.
Mm.
And if you measure it again next week, it could be different. But the employee experience is like a flowing river, and it's what happens over a period of time that collectively say to somebody, I'm aligned, I identify with the organization's values. They live the values, I live the values, I like the purpose, and I know what I'm doing contributes to something bigger than myself. Because we as human beings want to know that we have this contribution we're making to something bigger than ourselves. That's why we join volunteer organizations. That's why we give money to organizations and maybe get a charity receipt that helps us on our taxes or not. But the fact is, we do it and it makes us feel good. So if you can create that environment and work where those values are lived and tested and lived, where everybody there understands that the work they do, no matter what it is, contributes to the success of the organization, you have a strong organization. Problem is, a lot of people think that culture can be manipulated, and culture is a set of, it's rooted in the values. And I define values as strongly held beliefs, emotionally charged, highly resistant to change, and universally applied. So it can't be a different set of values for the new employee that just graduated from school and the CEO. It's got to be the same. And the behaviors have to be the same. And when you create stories through your company's history, I call those corporate legends, where there was a difficult time or something happened significant and you lived your values and it worked out better in the long run as a result of that. Those corporate legends are they're your goalposts for how you're supposed to behave. They tell you the truth about your organization. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations think that if you change your strategic plan, you change your culture. And going to becoming customer focused, you're always customer focused. That's not a culture thing. That's a way of doing business. Innovative. If you're not innovative, you die. So innovative has always been part of it's a way of, it's a strategy. It's not a value. And so when you think about values, what are those values? And what's even more interesting is they're going to be different in different parts of the world. I mean, you lived in the Gulf region, and now you're living in Asia, and you look at respect, and respect is completely different in those two regions. And so if you say to somebody, I'm respectful, without knowing their geographical grounding, without knowing who they are and their background, you might think respect is A, they think respect is B. Never the twain will meet, and the two of you are always disrespecting each other because you don't agree on what respect is, because you never talked about it. So that's why I'm saying that these values discussions people have, putting out nice slogans about the word doesn't mean anything. You got to define concrete, actionable behaviors that define what that means, so every employee has the same interpretation. And that will get you to the foundation for a positive employee experience.
My wife, as I mentioned before, she had an accident on an aircraft. And when she had the accident, the company, Emirates Airline, went into top gear. So she had an accident on the aircraft. They landed the aircraft. They got her straight to the hospital. We got to the hospital. We saw a surgeon. We weren't happy with what the surgeon suggested. And when I say we, it was me, my wife, and also management. We said, this is not the best option. Let's find another surgeon. So the next day, we had a brand new surgeon to look at the case, and we went ahead with that option. So we had the first surgery, and the surgeon said, this is going to be a 2.5 year process to get you fully rehabilitated mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And the company rolled out the red carpet. Well, for the next 2.5 years, you're going to get your base salary. We're going to take care of your housing. We're going to fly you around the world to find the best surgeons. And between surgeries, you're going to be taken care with psychologists. You're going to have emotional recovery. You're also going to have time just to retrain yourself for a new position in the future. And the company rolled out the red carpet. And there was very little shortfall on the promises they made. It was the best experience. And I said to my wife, I said, if you would have had this accident in Australia, you wouldn't have got this red carpet experience. If you had this accident anywhere else in the world, you wouldn't have been taken care of like this. But Emirates lived up to those values. And I was always confused because I was a leader and I would co-lead a team of 17,500 crew. I'd get 17 new crew to lead every day, and they'd complain about the company. And I'd look at them and say, are you on drugs? Because that's a totally different employee experience that
Yes, it
my
is.
wife is going through. I've seen it at the worst, and we're getting the best. Nothing's happening to you, and you're complaining it as if it's the worst. And we would meet other people and they would say, oh, we didn't get this, we didn't get that. And we started to ask ourselves the question, well, as the employee, have you played 100%? You're asking the company to play out at 100%, but are you playing out? And what we found was a lot of the people who weren't getting the same experience, meaning the employees, were taking shortcuts. They
Yes.
were
Well,
on industrial injury and they're traveling around the world.
yes.
It's like, I'm
Because
sorry, you
because
can't do
they
that.
know that the company's not going to live up to it. See, they knew that the values that they stated were not the values of the company. They figured
Yes.
that out very fast. So
Yes.
Emirates with your wife, and I assume she's better now, which is a good thing,
She's
is
better.
that's a corporate legend. Because if I want to work in it, people talk about, it's hard to find good help today. But if I interview somebody and at that interview, I tell the candidate, by the way, here's a story that tells you what our values are. I'm not going to tell you that we care about our employees or that we are, behind our employees or whatever it might be. Let me tell you a story. It's similar to I had one of my clients. We just finished the values exercise. It's an automobile parts maker, and it was about similar kind of situation where they take care of their employees and that their employees are the backbone of their organization. Without them, they can't be successful. And they hired now in U.S. law, well, not U.S. law, in the insurance company that they were using, new employees didn't get on to the insurance until after 6 months. And I got a phone call. This is right after we finished the values, rolled them out, talked about them. Everybody was excited about them. It was during a merger of 4 companies globally. And it was fascinating. He calls me up and he says, we hired this administrative assistant. She's new to the company. She's been here 3 months. And she just got back from the doctor that she has stage 4 cancer. It's going to cost about $1 million for treatment because she doesn't have the insurance yet because it's not 6 months. And he says, what am I supposed to do? And I kind of reversed the question on him and said, so we just went through this values exercise. What do you think you're supposed to do? And I could hear him smile on the phone and says, well, I knew you were going to say that. We'll pay for her health insurance. And they covered it. Now, what was even more interesting, they just told her that. And it was a decision the leadership team made that they were going to cover it, and they supported her, similar to your wife's situation. Everybody in that organization, 5,000 people, knew about it and energized 5,000 people to work harder.
Mm.
And I've got stories like that at, Michelin Tires. I mean, they're a global organization. I told a story once about a corporate legend at Michelin in Thailand, and some people in the audience say no company would ever do that for, their employee. And this guy in the back of the audience stood up, and I recognized him for some reason. And he introduced himself as the general manager of Michelin Thailand, who said, I got better stories than that, because those values are inculcated through the organization and are the foundation for its longevity. It doesn't change. It's protected by leadership. And it's fascinating to see when organizations can create that environment. You're absolutely right. And employees respond. Safety becomes less of a concern. Productivity goes up. Absenteeism goes down. And they're committed. And that's so important.
Mm. Mm. I love that concept of corporate legends, and every business should should have stories like that. And in real estate, when we have those corporate legends, it turns a business into what we call an attraction agency,
That's right.
because there's other people out there in the marketplace. And based on what I've learned is 50% of people are ready to fire their leader, and the other 50% are ready to fire the company. So there's always somebody looking for a new home, meaning they're looking for a new office to work from. And these corporate legends, they get out into the marketplace and people say, I want that from my leaders. I want that from my company. And they start to gravitate towards those businesses.
That's right. They are
And there was
attractive.
one recently. There's a company called Ray White Glenroy. And many years ago, I helped them recruit a new real estate agent. He came in with no experience. They trained him up to be a sales associate. He got so good at becoming a sales associate that he became a sales agent. And he went from earning a low income of 5 figures to earning multiple 6-figure income, around about $500,000 in around about 4 years. And it changed his life because he was working hard and his wife had a mental health issue. So he was able to fund her lifestyle and her care. He was also being able to raise his children and get them great education. And then unfortunately, one day, he dropped dead on the floor and he was in his 40s. And the business owners went around there at the time to console the family. And he was the only income earner in the house. The government said, well, his family's not on permanent residency. They're going to have to go home. And the company said, no, this is not possible. He was our friend. He was our team member. We consider him as family, and his children and his wife are our family. We will pay for them to stay. And the leaders, out of their own personal pockets, funded the lifestyle of the family so they could stay in the country. And most businesses, after a loss, would experience a dip. This business went into another growth phase because the word got around that these people take care of their people so well that other people said, well, we're jumping ship. We know our boss, our company would never do that. We're going to go work for them. And their company has grown day after day, month after month, year after year. They used to be in the bottom of about 700 businesses. Now they're in the top 5. And they could tell you these corporate legends all day, every day. And it's what attracts top talent to them.
They're a magnet because people are always looking for an organization that aligns with their values. And it's interesting you say that because people get fooled. I was working with an investment broker firm here in Toronto, and one day I was with the CEO, and he said he just lost one of his best brokers to the competition. And about a month later, I was in the office with the CEO again when that broker came in and said, could I have my job back? Because he thought the grass was greener on the other side. They're in the same business, literally across the street from each other. And the way they behaved at the other business was the antithesis of this brokerage firm.
Mhm.
And even though he was going to make more money across the street as a successful broker, money was relative, but he came back and said, I'd rather make less money and be happy than make more money and be miserable and always watching my back.
Mhm.
And he came back. He said, sure, you can have your job back. He came back. And that's, to me, is, different companies are going to have different values. They might call them the same things. They might look good in the press, but you got to, look under the bonnet, so to speak, under the hood, and you got to look at what does it really mean? What do those actions really mean in real life? And is that aligned with the way I want to behave? I have my students. It's funny. I used to teach undergraduate school here at one of the colleges, and I was teaching organizational development to last year financial students. They thought, of course, that it was why were we even bothering with this course? By the end of the course, they realized it was probably one of the best courses they had because it really opened up about who they were. And I said to them, when you go for an interview, and they said, do you have any questions for us? I said, look on the website before you go. What are their values? And ask them for corporate legend. Half the time, people said they came back because the people interviewing them didn't even know what the values were. And I said, do you really want to work there? And I got a message on LinkedIn about 2 years ago from one of my students who said, I wish I listened to you. This is my third company in 4 years. I finally found one that's aligned to my values. She says, I think I'll stay here for a while.
Fascinating. I was at a turning point in my life in 2008, and I stopped being a business owner and I became an employee. And I was looking for a different experience. And I decided that I wanted to work with Emirates Airline. So I was driving over the Sydney Harbour Bridge. I see this big white building that's obviously been there for 50 years, and I've never looked at it. And it's got this big red sign on the top, and it says Emirates. So I said, okay, I'm going to go down and I'm going to go buy a newspaper. And I looked in the employment section, and Emirates was recruiting in Sydney. And I'd already had friends who were working with Emirates, and I knew it was a great company to work with. And I rang them up and I said, I want to apply for the job. And they said, awesome. We're interviewing in Sydney next week. And I said, put my name down. I'll be there. So I went and got my hair cut, got my suit pressed, and I went to the interview. And I had already decided I wanted to work with them. And they just now had to realize that I was the right person for them. So I went through the interview process. And as I watched the interview process, they took about 500 people. They cut it down to about 100. They cut it down to about 50. They cut it down to about 15 people. And at the end, I looked at all those 15 people and I thought to myself, that's an excellent choice. Obviously, I'm in the top 15, which is smart for them. But also the other people there, I'd actually really like to work with those people. And I think they did a good job at culling the other 485 people. We went through the rounds of interviews. We did our psychology test to make sure that we weren't too psychotic. And then we got our job offers. And they rang me up and said, Mr. Tolson, congratulations. We would like you to join Emirates. And I said, I'm in. They said, could you be in the Middle East in 6 weeks? And I said, how does about 6 days sound? And they said, we'll see what can happen. They called me back. They made it happen a little bit faster. And then they gave me a map of the onboarding process. And each of those touch points on the map, I ticked off. They said, when you get to the airport, somebody's going to be there to meet you. I got to the airport. Mr. Tolson, welcome to Emirates. Thank you so much. We're going to check you in. You're going to go to the lounge. Mr. Tolson, welcome to the lounge. Welcome to Emirates. You're going to get on the aircraft. Your crew are going to recognize you. Daniel, welcome to Emirates. Welcome to the family. And all of the things that they promised me, they delivered. They even said, when you arrive in Dubai, there's going to be a sign that says Marhaba, which means welcome in Arabic. And just follow that sign. We're going to take you to head office. We're going to give you a handful of cash because we know people of your age probably don't have a lot of savings, and Dubai is an expensive place to live. So I got there. I got cash in hand, then taken to a hotel apartment. They said, here's your hotel apartment. It's going to be cleaned every single day whilst you live here. You don't have to worry about cleaning, but there's washing machines, there's refrigerators. Just enjoy yourself. A bus is going to pick you up tomorrow. You're going to go to training college for 6 weeks. Bang, bang, bang. Everything was delivered exactly how they said it would be. Nothing was below or above the standard. It was just exactly what they promised. And for me, it started to build that belief in the company. These people make and keep promises. And for my whole career, it was the same thing. They made a promise and they kept the promise. And so for the time that I was there, I had no grievance. Other than I was tired and jet lagged, I had no grievance with the company. And now I feel like I'm an ambassador for them.
Yes.
If you want to change your life, go and work for them. Get rid of that job, get rid of that girlfriend, go and travel the world, but only do it with one airline. And then when we travel to Europe and to the Middle East, we only want to travel with them. So now we're a customer for life. And I tie that back to what you were saying before about employee experience. It was so good that I've become an ambassador, and now I'm enjoying the customer experience.
And here's something that people don't realize, and you mentioned it very clearly. The employee experience begins with the invitation to the interview, not the first day on the job. And candidates are judging you. They're interviewing you as well as you're interviewing them. So you have to realize that if you say the meeting's going to start at 10 o'clock, you start at 10:30, they're already wondering about something. If you come into the interview and they say, I've been really busy, I didn't get a chance to read your resume, tell me something about, give me a short story of your resume. I was just disrespected. This is a mutual relationship we're going to build here, and you're starting it off by saying you didn't even have time to get to know what my name is. So that's why people don't realize that employee experience even begins with the ad that people are putting, the way they word the LinkedIn or the Indeed ad or whatever they're putting it. The way it's worded even is telling people what it means to work here, and people don't get it. They think that, well, we can have those pizza parties and they're going to have a good time and they'll have a good employee experience. No, they'll be happily engaged for one day, but they're not having a long-term experience.
Mm-hmm. It is a partnership. It's equivalent to a marriage. And you're going to spend more time in that workplace than you are with your family.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's that dating period. I say to my clients, interview slowly, get to know the person, figure out, would you bring this person home and sit them down in front of your family? Would you invite them home for Christmas dinner? And if the answer is no, don't bring them on board. But also from somebody who's applying for a job, I would tell them the same thing. Sit down with them, get to know them. Would you want to sit at their dinner table at Christmas?
That's right.
If not, don't go there. And as much as we want to earn money, we also want to preserve our peace of mind. I think people should be happy when they go to work. People should be laughing in the workplace. They should be building friendships and relationships based on mutual respect and trust, not just for the exchange of a dollar.
That's right. And then my latest book called Selecting the Best. In the first half, I talk about how do you identify the behaviors of the authentic values, and then how do you create an interview process based on structured behavioral interviewing that actually identifies people who you will want to invite to dinner, people that will be successful, people that you can trust that when a decision has to be made that there's no precedence for, it goes with the values, not with what's expedient or makes them look good. And so, the book it's a fascinating story because it's a case study of a chemical plant in Corpus Christi, Texas, which unfortunately, because of the Italian company that was building it, there was a crisis and they stopped building the plant, and the employees scattered around the United States. And when a conglomerate took it over and started to rebuild it, the leadership said, well, let's invite back our key employees. And some of them were as far away as Seattle, which is a long way from Texas, especially Corpus Christi. And when I got there to talk to some of these employees that came back, two of them came back at a 25% cut in salary. And when I asked them why, they said, I've never worked at a place where I knew the boss was going to do the right thing every day and always had my back and would always help me. And I'd rather work here than work someplace else. And I thought he was crazy leaving Seattle, Washington for Corpus Christi, Texas. It's a huge difference, but he loved it. And there were 10 of them that came back at anywhere from a 25% to 10% cut in the salary. So salary to me is a hygiene factor. You take the job knowing you can pay your bills and live the lifestyle you want, and then you forget about it. So salary is, it's the thing they consider in the beginning, but that's just a hygiene factor. And if you don't have the right experience, you're not going to have employees that are going to be retained, engaged, productive, work safely.
When I worked with Emirates Airline, one of the things I knew they would do for me was train me. And for 4 years, it was non-stop training. And it was a low income, but I was happy. And I know I was happy because I was saving about 80% of my income. I was saving more than people earning 4 and 5 times the amount back in my home country. And I think sometimes people need a lot of money because they're so dissatisfied that they're going to try to keep themselves externally happy.
Yeah, it's compensation.
With tangible goods.
Yeah.
And one of the rewards for me was this non-stop training. They trained me in critical incident stress management. I didn't realize that would be a tool that I could sell at an hourly rate for the rest of my life. I didn't realize it at that stage. They taught me peer support. They taught me how to lead. They taught me how to coach. They taught me how to deliver a 5-star service. And coming to the end of my career, let's say I was earning $30 an hour, plus all the perks. I was already having a side hustle coaching other people on the things that they'd taught me, and I was earning $125 an hour on my side hustle.
Well, and it was a lot of people work for airlines. I've done a lot of work with Air Canada, and they have a similar approach as what you're talking about with Emirates. But a lot of, especially flight attendants who work only a certain or confined to a certain number of days in a month, a lot of them have a second job. So, because if you're in the airline business, especially a flight attendant, you're not making any money. So you got to have that second job.
We would do we'd call it 100 hours a month. And we thought that was a lot. And it is, because you're always jet lagged and your circadian clock's always out of whack. But let's say it's 25 hours a week. You've got all the time on your layover, paid to study. And then between flights, you might have 2 or 3 days off. So there's heaps of time. So I just used that time to build an exit strategy for my consulting business. And so by the time I exited, my consulting rate was $250 an hour, which was 9 times more per hour than I was used to earning on everything that they'd taught me.
Right.
And there was other people. One of my good friends, I work with him today. I consult to his business. He is earning millions and millions a year. And a lot of the foundations were from the airline industry, from everything the company taught him. And it's interesting to see that. If you find a company, you like it, the money, yes, there's hygiene issues, but what else can you gain? If you can gain peace of mind and experience, and that can be a stepping stone to the next thing, whether the next thing is 5 or 10 or 20 years away, take it.
It's interesting you say that, because I was just interviewed by a journalist who called me and said that, I forgot the company that did the survey, said the number one reason that retention is an issue is people are leaving because they're not getting promoted. And I said, well, there's a backstory to not getting promoted. They're not getting promoted because they don't have the skill, the knowledge, behaviors for those other jobs, because these companies are not training them. The number one thing that people are craving is development.
Mhm.
And as long as you're giving people that development and they see opportunity to work in other areas in the company, work on special projects, do things that are different, they're going to stay with you a long time. It's when you stop. And as you and I both know, in many corporations, when times get tough, the first thing cut is the training budget,
Mhm.
especially the soft skill training budget. And that's the most important one to teach, because through repetition and help of a coworker, you'll learn the skill you need to know. It's the old apprentice system. You're going to learn it.
Mhm.
It's how do you become a better leader? How do you grow your emotional intelligence? How do you grow your awareness? Those are the things that staff at all levels need to understand. And it makes a much better work environment. So instead of worrying about people leaving because they can't get promotions, try giving them an opportunity to grow and learn and see how quickly they stay at the company.
Mhm. Emotional intelligence, a lot of business people that I speak to would say it's a buzzword,
Yes.
and they still really don't get what it is. How do you frame it? How do you describe emotional intelligence in a way that a business owner would say, "Oh yeah, we should develop our people"?
Emotional intelligence are 12 competencies that are divided into four categories, and they're two: how I see myself and how I see other people see me. And if I have that awareness that, Viktor Frankl said that between a thought and an action, there's freedom. And in that moment of freedom, you're making a decision how you're going to react to that situation. And if you can have that emotional awareness to say, if I do this, this person will be motivated. If I do this, I'm going to offend them. If I do this, they're going to ask me more questions, and be aware. So it's really emotional awareness is emotional intelligence is emotional awareness of how you impact others and others impact you. What are those
Mm.
triggers that you have that you're not being aware of? If you become aware of your triggers, it's funny you say my 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 kids, they were, they're adults now and have their own kids at college, but when they were young and they taught my grandchildren this, they said, when you go and talk to him, he's going to say no right away. Wait a half hour, go ask him again, he'll say yes. Well, that was my trigger. My trigger was as soon as they asked me a question, I thought I had to say no because I was going to teach them something or whatever, instead of saying to them, why or how or how's it going to benefit you or why do you want to do it or who's involved, and then say yes. But the guilt would, because I said no, the guilt would hit in. They come back to me and say, oh, sure, go do it. So it was expect the no, walk away and come back and say yes. Well, I began to understand my trigger and I have a much better relationship with my children as a result. So
Mm.
it's not emotional intelligence. I was working with a bank CEO once, highly recognized, world renowned guy. And I was working with him on emotional intelligence. At one point, he broke down and cried. He said, oh my God, I'm treating my children this way. No wonder they don't talk to me. And I said, well, now that you know it, you have the power to do something about it. Because beforehand, it was bothering you, but you didn't know why. But now you know why. Now you can take action. And so it's something that emotional intelligence is common sense in a lot of ways about how do you impact others and how do others impact you, and is your reaction to others and their reaction to you what you really want? Is it productive? Is it helpful? Is it insightful? And if it's not, then you got to change that. And so it lays out the 12 competencies that allow you to be aware. Or am I coaching them? Am I mentoring them? Am I communicating correctly? Am I sharing things with them in the right way? And it just helps you put a trigger to that. And, am I being empathetic? Am I not being empathetic? And it really helps you to develop a better relationship. And if you have a better relationship, everything we said comes true. Employees stick around, they become more productive, they become more innovative, they become more committed to the job, and everybody's successful.
My mentor's voice is talking to me in the other ear, and he's saying, common sense is not that common.
Yes. There's nothing common about common sense.
Would it be absurd to think that a business owner who shows up 30 minutes late to a recruitment interview doesn't understand how he triggers other people?
No, he has zero emotional intelligence.
And in the interview process, I could imagine the talent looking at this person saying, it wouldn't matter how good I am. My talent's not going to fit here. It's absurd. Your new book, what's the title and where can we get a copy, Dr. David?
It's called Selecting the Best, Building a Workforce Driven by Values for Lasting Success. It's right now it's on sale on Amazon actually for a significant amount. It's quite cheap right now, but only on Amazon. Or you can buy it online in any book retailer. They all have it online. And if people want to talk to me about it, please get in touch.
Thank you. Dr. David, it's been a pleasure to have you here. I'll be getting myself a copy of the book. And the reason why I'm going to get a copy is that selecting, training, and keeping top talent is, in my opinion, one of the most important skills of the leader. And the future of every business is going to rely on talent. And there is good talent out there. You've just got to have a strategy and a culture that helps you attract and then keep it.
That's right. And that book will give you a roadmap for that.
Let's do it. Dr. David, thank you for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity. Glad to share with you. Had fun.